Computer. And there we go. I think we're recording again. I never know if we're recording or not.
I see the red light. We're good.
Cool. So, hey, Cameron, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Like most people, I know you're successful people. I know you're very busy. So, taking the time to be on this today is great, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I appreciate the invite.
Thank you. Thank you. So, I know you, but I don't know how many other people know you. Maybe you're worldwide famous. Maybe you're Insta famous. I don't know, or infamous. I don't know. Do you want to give a little description about who you are, what you do, and maybe a little bit about your company as well?
Yeah, little background is Cameron Christiansen. Actually grew up in Idaho. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho is where I'm from. My wife and I moved to Vegas almost 16 years ago now. But I came to town. I started a company, and it was in that I really started looking at financial advising or the advice that was being given to people. I was a small business owner, and so I was looking for a place to put my money. And that's really what kind of got me started down this road. And I started advising 10 years ago. And I was with the firm for 10 years, and I just left them about a little over a year ago. And I partnered with one of my best friends here in town. His name's Anthony Faso. He is a CPA, and we worked together at our old firm for 8 years. And now we are partners in Infinite Wealth Consultants. So that's where we're at, man.
Very cool. Very cool. So you said there's a few interesting things there. So start off with you moved from Idaho, right? What brought you to Vegas?
What brought us? It was actually school. Is my original plan was to be a physical therapist.
Okay.
And so, he's got a great PT program, and I was deciding between Pacific University in Forest Grove, Oregon, or UNLV, and my older sister lived here, and so we're like, hey, let's come down and hang out with some family for a few years, and we moved to Vegas, and it wasn't too far after that I was looking for a job, and I started caddying. Actually, is my story. I started caddying on the golf courses here in Vegas. And just a brief side story is I actually started running the program. That was the business that I ran. Is the guy that was running the program actually took off, and I kind of went into management. And I was like, hey guys, listen, you got huge liability on your hands. You've got 60 something caddies that are running around here every single day. I'd recommend you do this, this, and this. And they asked me to do it, and I said, yeah, but you got to pay me. And then I turned around the caddies and I was like, all right, guys, there's 60 something of you here today. Tomorrow there's only going to be 30. And I said, it's going to be my job moving forward to make sure that you guys work every day. I said, do you guys like that idea? And they said, yes. And I said, good, because you got to pay me. So all I did is I just cleaned it up, and I created this company called Professional Caddy Management, which essentially removed the liability from the golf course.
Yeah.
And then it was, then I was there to kind of support and provide the caddies, and that's what I did for 7+ years. And it was in that I got my business experience, right? And it was in that I was managing, men that were 50 years old, and I was early 20s, and it taught me a lot about being able to talk to people and kind of bring people together to get to a common goal without, like verbally demeaning someone and talking down to them, right? I mean, I was early 20s, and so I had to get a bunch of people on the same page at that point. So it was a great lesson for me, just on the kind of dynamics of personal interactions, and on the business side of it, man, it was tremendous. It was I started to make some really good money, and I started looking for places to put it. And my experience was, as a small business owner, is I really did not like any of the options that were being presented to me. And that kind of fell under the umbrella of just qualified plans in general. It just never clicked for me as a small business owner, entrepreneur, that I would put my money into an account that I can't come back and touch it until I'm almost 60 years old.
Yeah.
That just never made sense to me. And so I sat on cash for years, and I never really did anything. And it wasn't until my wife and I were kind of buying our house that I came across this idea of some of the strategies that I implement and teach today. And really it was by complete happenstance. Is I was in there buying my house, and the guy that was our loan officer was sitting there, and I asked him if he had a good book for a young couple, and just completely out of the blue,
Yeah.
he looked at me and he reaches back off his desk and he hands me this book and he goes, "If I'd have read this when I was your age, it would have been the difference of millions of dollars." And I grabbed that book, and I remember walking out of that meeting and I was like, what the heck, right? And so I started reading this book, and I read it 3 times the first night.
Wow.
Right. And I'm like, and the reason I read it 3 times is because after the first time I was pissed off.
Right.
Because I thought I was pretty bright. I thought I was smart. I was making good money. And there was some fundamental things about money in there that nobody had ever taught me or told me. And I specifically remember on page 45 of that book is where it shows, the author goes through and shows an illustration of what it is when you pay cash for big purchases in life versus using your cash as collateral, right? Just putting up and borrowing against it. And I remember I looked at that, every way and sideways, and just started dissecting that the first night. And I was pissed off because I'd operated on cash. I'd paid cash for everything. And no, I was mad. Nobody ever told me about it. And so it made me question a lot of the advice that was out there. And I started digging into some of these strategies, and I started implementing them for myself and for my business. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's quite the journey, right? From starting out in Idaho to wanting to be a physical therapist to caddying to then on just randomly finding this book out of nowhere. Because who knows that guy doesn't give you the book, right? Maybe you never find that book, you never hear about it, and
who knows? Yeah.
And here you are. It just shows you that life, you've got to be open to stuff, right? If you're open to accepting stuff, you never know where it could take you.
I totally agree, man. Right. And you shared your story with me, right? And kind of how you kind of took this road and kind of got pushed in different directions. And man, you look back on life and, you think you've got it all figured out. And reality is, man, you have no clue what we're doing, right? I mean, there's opportunities that present themselves, and sometimes you act on them and sometimes you don't. And I certainly wouldn't be here if it was up to me to kind of find this way. But you know what? I feel like I've had some help along the way. So
yeah, very cool, very cool. And it's also really interesting to me to as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure there's plenty out there. You work so hard for your money, and obviously your goal is some kind of financial freedom, or some kind of financial reward for all your hard work and the risks that you take. Yeah. But so many people, I don't feel like they understand their options out there. Like you said, if you're in your 20s and you want to look to invest, and you go to a financial advisor, and don't mean to paint all of them the same way, but they're going to tell you, put it in a 401k, put it in an IRA, and then when you're 59 and a half, you can kind of enjoy it. If you make it to 59 and a half, right? And yeah. I don't think, I think that's why the FIRE movement, I'm sure you're probably aware, the financial early movement is so popular, because there are so many different other ways. And, you only have one life, so you want to, make the most of it. That doesn't mean sipping Mai Tais on the beach, but it means having that freedom to do whatever you want if you want it. And that's such a great point that I think anyone who's not financially aware should kind of look in at. It could be real estate, it could be infinite banking, it could be just stocks, it could be anything, but there are options out there, and I think it's important that people realize that.
I totally agree, right? People come to me all the time and they say, what should I do? And I say, hey man, we're going to start with the end in mind. Like, what do you want to do? What do you want this thing to look like? And what's your time frame? Because if you want to work to your 70, then maybe that traditional plan is going to work for you, right? But I think that there's a kind of a shift in generations of kind of what people want as far as what they want their lifestyle to be, right? Is, man, I work really hard, but I also play really hard, just in regards to making sure that I have time for my family. And it's a tough balance. I think that now more so than ever, people want to devote that time and want to enjoy some of those life experiences along the way. Whereas previously it was just, man, you're working 9 to 5 for 40 years and that's it. Right. So there's a big shift. And I think that's where some of these alternative strategies come into place is, man, if you can take that money and start creating some cash flow, right, and relieve some of that pressure from the earned income side of it, man, now you can breathe a little bit, right? Now you can go out there and do some of the things vacations with your kids and hang out with the wife a little bit more than otherwise. So there's a lot of options.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And kind of on that point, I think that's a good transition into the infinite banking concept. Do you call it infinite banking concept, or do you have a different term? That's what okay.
Like I call the infinite banking concept, the guy that created it, that was really the pioneer. His name's Nelson Nash. His book is called The Infinite Banking Concept. I've always just kind of called it that, or privatized banking has been
Yeah.
my moniker for it. So either one of those two, I usually say it interchangeably.
Okay. Before I forget, what is that book? And people might be really interested now. That the book that you read 3 times, is it that book? The book you read 3 times in the first
Yeah,
time?
yeah, that's it. This is actually the book.
So,
Yep.
so it's just called Infinite Banking Concept by Nelson Nash.
This is called it's called Becoming Your Own Banker.
Okay. Yeah.
Become Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash. That book, like I said, man, it upset me. It made me angry, and set me down this road of just curiosity and just trying to find out kind of what the answer really was on a lot of these things. And so that book started all for me.
Probably worth a read for a lot of people. Then. So,
Yeah.
this concept is simple but complicated, right? Would you agree? In some ways, it's kind of simple, but in a lot of ways, it's complicated. So,
A great way to say it. I'm going to jump in there. I say almost say the same thing to clients. Is I say the idea is simple, but it's not easy.
yeah,
Right? And the reason that it's not easy is because, we all don't look like you, right? With big muscles, because we know we should go to the gym, but it's not easy,
right.
right? And so part of this strategy is, hey, if we borrow or we take a loan against our money, is we got to pay it back. And for a lot of people, they've never been taught that. There's not that accountability piece that's there. And so a lot of this strategy, and when I start working with clients, it's not about big money. It's not about, hey, how much can we move over into these types of accounts? It's the basics. It is literally like, hey, let's start small. Let's create habits, right? I liken it to working out all the time. Man, it's like the guy that sets his New Year's resolution to go work out 6 days a week and bulk up in the first month, and he goes for 2 days, he's sore and he quits. And you're like, okay, man, like let's bring a happy medium in here, right? Let's create some healthy habits when you're in your diet, and let's go 3 days a week the first week and kind of build up to it. So, right, there's a lot of similarities there.
Cool. So I'm sure you get asked this a lot, and maybe you have a kind of an answers. If you were to try and explain it to someone who's never heard about it before, how would you explain it?
Man, that is such a good question, right? I just right. So I've been around it. I've been using it. I've been practicing this for my own money for 12 years or more. And there's it's like I said, there's so much information that I could go with, but really at the end of the day is what we're going to do is the infinite banking concept is the idea of using whole life insurance as a bank or as a cash management tool, right? And really the reason that you want to do that is because there's no restrictions on how much money you can put in there, right? There's no IRS oversight on it, right? They're not telling you, hey, you can't put this much in here, right? You can only put 17,000 a year into it, all these contribution, right? They don't have any of that. It's literally you put your money in there and you have complete control over it to do whatever you want to do with it. And then the biggest part, there's really two big things that kind of set it apart from other cash accounts is number one is its earnings rate. So when you look at a life insurance policy that's structured appropriately, you can earn anywhere from, depending on somebody's age, let's say 3 to maybe even up to 5% on a cash account. And then number two is because the loan provisions that are found inside that product is you have this money that's in there just continuing to compound, right? And so you're never breaking this compounding curve on these dollars. And so what you see in this account is you just see this kind of curve, right? Starts off real slow, and then over a number of years, it just starts to take off. And so really the idea behind this infinite banking is, hey, you know what, where we're going to put our money is we're going to put it into this account. and we're going to let it grow at, let's call it 4% tax free. And now what we're going to do, right, is we're going to think like a business owner, an entrepreneur, and we're going to go look at opportunities to invest, right? And this is such a good fit with real estate. We've got a bunch of real estate investment clients. And the reason for that is because the bank, the policy is liquid, right? We've got cash reserves. And one of the downsides with real estate a lot of the time is that it's illiquid, right? So when you combine the two of these, you've got a policy to hold your cash, you've got the asset or the real estate to create cash flow, right? And so now what you've got is you've got kind of this cycle of ever increasing cash or reserves, capital reserves for you. And so it's a great fit. I don't know if I did it justice or not, but you know what, is I do my best, and a lot of times I usually end up drawing. That's why I've got this whiteboard over here. So if anybody has questions, man, I'm happy to kind of send them. We do have an online course that my partner and I have created. And if anybody's listening, I'm happy to kind of give them access to it. We typically reserve that just for clients. But just because I know you, I'm happy to kind of extend that invitation out to anybody that would want access to it. And they can kind of nose around in there and look at some of the pros and some of the cons and different ways that clients have used it. So I'm happy to extend that offer.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think you did a great job, and we'll include the link to that and anyone who's interested, as well as your information. Because I think a lot of times it helps to speak to you personally, because it's so, I think versatile is a good word, that you can use it in so many different ways that it depends what your goals and what you're looking to do is, that you can kind of adapt it to that. The way I kind of see it with my simple mind is that you're able to put cash into a whole life insurance. So you get the insurance part as well. You know that.
I forgot about that.
But I think it does get overlooked because people want to look at how they can use that money. So you get the whole life insurance, so you can, you have peace of mind that you and your family and or whoever else can take advantage should something happen to you, so that you're covered in that way. So that's, for a lot of people that's attractive. But also you put cash in, that money grows. So you put 100,000 in, I'm just making numbers up, 100,000. Doesn't matter what you do, that 100,000 is going to grow at 4%. Then you can take money out and loan against that collateral, and take that money out to do whatever you want, invest, buy a business, invest in real estate, buy stocks. And that money still grows. That 100,000 still grows at that 4%. You still have the insurance, the whole life insurance, but also at the same time, you're able to invest in other types of assets. Would that be correct?
Dude, you've been doing your homework. I'm impressed, man. Well done.
I don't know. I'm simple-minded, so I think sometimes it helps.
Hey,
yeah. So as you were talking there, it made me wonder. So you borrow money out and you want to invest in real estate, and you want to buy a property with 20% down, say an investment property. Has there been any issues with banks? Because it's a loan, it's not necessarily that free money. It's, have banks had any issues with clients using their whole life insurance money? None?
None. Whole life insurance is one of the best places that you can store cash, right? Just because of the safety and security. You have the insurance company, these mutual insurance companies that have been around for 100 plus years, that are backing, right, this pledge of money that's there. And so banks have no issues with that. It is, I've had clients, we have many clients that call and use their cash value as collateral for investments. Mm-hmm. And if there's ever a question, it's really just the lender saying, hey, where did this down payment come from? Mm-hmm. And then what we do is we just print off a statement of their current cash values, their gross and their net values, and we send that along to them, just kind of on the insurance company's letterhead, and that has always sufficed. So they have no questions, no problems with it at all.
Okay, cool. That's great. So talk a little bit about someone opens an account. They want to invest for the medium to long term. But they're also looking to invest in real estate. Is that too broad of a scenario for you to maybe try and break it down? How you would advise them to use it? How would they use the policy in that aspect?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the cool thing, right? is I'm going to give you a big, broad answer to that. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Okay. So when we fund a policy, right, there's really two ways that there's two reasons that you're going to use that money, right? Is going to be kind of for personal consumption, right? Whether you're going to go buy a car that you're going to drive, right? Or you're going to go buy an asset that is going to appreciate. And so the distinction that I always make with people is that, hey, when we fund a policy, we have a ton of flexibility on the funding part of it, right? You can fund a policy monthly, right? Uh, or you can come in and we have a bunch of clients, real estate clients, they come into big windfalls, 100,000, several $100,000. A lot of times they have it sitting in checking accounts. And what we'll do is we'll just move that over into the policy. So we've got access to the cash value, right? Almost immediately. What we do with that money is really important. And this is what I was leading up to, was that when you take a loan against the cash value and you consume it yourself, so you go buy a car for yourself, which is kind of the traditional mindset of the infinite banking idea, which is to recapture personal expenses or debts. What I tell everybody is the problem with that is that you're on the hook for making that payment back to the policy, replenishing those dollars, right? So there's a responsibility for me to go to work the next day to make that car payment at the end of the month to replenish those dollars in my policy. On the other side of it is if you take those dollars and you take a loan against your cash value and you go buy an asset, typically real estate. We're big fans of turnkey rental properties. Simple, easy. There's lots of systems that you can plug into out there and they know what they're doing. But you got immediate cash flow, right? So you've got cash flow every single month that's showing up, that's going back to pay that policy loan back. In that scenario, the responsibility of paying that loan back is not on me, it's on the tenant, right? And so I'm still funding my policy with the premium payments and my savings that are coming out of my income, but now my tenant is paying that back. So if I want to go and take a month off and go do something, man, that loan, right, that equity is still being built back inside my policy because it's being paid by a third party.
Yeah.
So I will tell everybody one of the mistakes that, not mistakes, but I was taught the first way, right? The latter way is, hey, let's go recapture all of our expenses for our cars and those things. And I started looking at this and I'm like, man, I got huge premiums that I'm paying, right? Because I'm saving money.
Yeah.
And then number two is I look at it and man, I got to go back to work to make sure I pay all my car payments. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me. So this is why a lot of my conversations, and I think it's why we have such a good following with real estate investors, is because they understand that, right? It took me a little bit longer to come to that conclusion, right? But man, is if we take that cash value and we go buy an asset, we have a third party, somebody else that is paying those loans back, man, what we've bought is we've just bought time, right? We've traded our money that was sitting there as cash value. We still have it. It's still growing. But in addition to it is we have that rental property that is providing income to us. And so now, right, we're looking at that time freedom piece that a lot of people are missing. And even a lot of people in the IBC community miss because they're so focused on the debt recapture and financing your own vehicles and those things. So there's a big distinction there that I hope was relayed just through that conversation. But we've got videos and more education stuff that we can provide on that too. So.
Cool. Yeah, I think I never thought about it until you brought it up now. That's such a powerful tool because your tenant is not only paying down your mortgage, he's paying back into that policy for you. So you're making whatever return on that property and that the tenant is paying you, but also all the meanwhile, that money that you have in the account is growing at whatever 3 to 5%, whatever it is.
Yep.
So not only are you making that money, and the tenant is paying everything back for you. So it's just such an amazing, powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Just to reiterate that, they're paying the policy loan back.
Yep.
Right. Which is the down payment that we put on the property. So the tenant's paying that back. And we're also taking some money out of cash flow for lifestyle if we want to. But the other piece of it is we just did an interview with one of the brightest lenders I've ever met in my life. His name is Aaron Chapman, right? He does over 700 loans a year strictly for real estate investors. And he did a couple pieces where he breaks down the idea or the concept of how the lender, right, or your tenant is paying down the equity in your house, but you are deducting all of those taxes, right? So you get all the advantages in this whole wheel, right? This whole thing is they're paying back your mortgage, they're paying down they're paying up equity in your house, right? They're paying back the policy loan, and it's just a phenomenal piece. That's another great piece that I can share with you guys. Is we've had a ton of really good feedback just on those two podcasts that we did with Aaron, and he's a hit with real estate investors. He just talks the way that he talks, man. It just connects with them, and they listen. So really good piece. Happy to share that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. There's a few other pieces just from when you're talking then that's really interesting to me. One is the taxes. So you said, that it grows in there tax-free, right? That would be the 3 to 5%, whatever, call it 4%. That grows at a tax-free rate.
Correct. Yep.
So whenever you would want to take that out, you pull it out at a tax-free rate.
Exactly. So you got two options, right? So I'm gonna be thorough here with you. So it might take a second.
Absolutely. Yeah, please do.
Yeah, cool. So when we are paying premiums into that policy, we're building that cash value, right? And anytime that we have cash value, you can access that money in one of two ways. Number one is you can surrender it, which means that, hey, give me my 100,000. I'm not going to pay you back, and they'll just cut you a check and they send you the 100,000, and the kind of relationship is over and done with, right? That means you can't put any more money back in there, right? But you don't have the obligation of paying them back either. So it's kind of just case specific there. The other option is to take a loan. So if we have 100,000 and we take a loan against our cash value, is now we have the option of paying that back at some point. And that's the reason, that's the compounding that we were talking about before. So nothing's good or bad. Everything is just kind of how we use it. It's a tool. It's like debt.
Yeah.
The loan provisions are most useful when we're accumulating cash value. So when we're paying premiums, right, we've got income that's coming in, and we're trying to build as much cash value in this because then we can go take a loan against it. And then let's say we get to retirement, right? And the traditional retirement age is, 65 years old, whatever it is. And if we had our money in an investment account, the only thing that we do is we just draw down on that retirement, right? And so the same thing, the similarity there in the policy is that when you get to retirement is you can then start to surrender your cash value, right? So you're accessing the same dollars that you had in there, but really what you're telling the insurance company is, hey, I have no intent of paying you back. And so the loan is really on those accumulating years, or the loan provisions that we want to utilize come into play on the accumulating years. And then the surrender comes into play on the back end as we draw down on that for retirement income typically.
Wow. Okay.
So two provisions, we're going to use both of them just in different periods of time.
That's amazing. It really is. So, as a real estate investor, I'm sure anyone listening, you talked about taking a loan to buy real estate against your name, and then you have to pay that. Typically, what does that look like? Is there what kind of interest rate? I'm sure it depends. How quickly can you access the money? How much can you access? And what is the payback period? What is it amortized over and whatnot?
Great questions, right? Really good questions. All right, so let's address the first one. The first one was, what does a loan look like, right? So let's stick with our example. We got $100,000 in there. So first thing is, when you have $100,000 of cash value in your policies, the insurance company always wants to leave a little bit in reserves. So they will typically lend out around 95 to 97% of the cash value. So if you've got $100,000 in there, you can access, let's say conservatively, $95,000 of it. So you always got to leave a little bit in there, right? So in this case, $5,000. When we take a loan against that, again, I want to be really clear, is our 100,000 is still sitting there earning, roughly that 4% for us. So we're going to take a loan against it. The interesting part here is that the loan doesn't come from our policy. Like I just mentioned, it's actually going to come from the general fund of the insurance company. So that's like their investment arm. That's where they go and they make their investments to create a return for their from their investment portfolio to pay the obligations that they have, which are the death benefits and those things that exist with the policies. And so they need to get a return, right? And so they're going to charge us an interest rate on that money. And typically the market interest rate right now is 5%. There's some companies that charge more. We typically don't work with them because if we can find somebody that's a little bit lower, we're going to go with them, right? Yeah. So they'll charge us 5%. And so The loan repayment, once we take that money, what I'll tell clients is the loan repayment on how to get that money back into that policy is really dictated. I try to keep it simple, and I say that we're going to let the investment or the asset that we purchase dictate our loan repayment.
Okay.
So if we go buy a rental property and we have monthly income, right, monthly cash flow that's coming to us on a monthly basis, then what we're going to do is we're going to take a percentage of that, if not all of it, and send it back to the policy to repay that loan. We got a lot of guys that do fix and flips, and money's outstanding anywhere from 2 months to 6 months sometimes. Well, great. We'll just let it ride, right? We'll take the 100,000, and we won't make any sort of loan repayments, anything like that, for 6 months until we sell the property. And then what we'll do is we will put our 100,000 back, plus the interest, plus some profit, right? So what we want to do is we want to let that asset dictate our loan repayment schedule.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's something, again, I didn't realize at all. So it's very variable and very flexible. So if someone's, like you said, so if you have a fix and flip, like you said, and you expect it to be sold and out the door in 6 months and have your money back, you guys don't charge anything for that 6 months.
So the insurance company is always going to charge the 5, right? Anytime a dollar is they're going to charge 5%. I want to be really clear.
Okay.
So me as the policy owner and me, the person that's taking the money as a loan against my cash value, I dictate when and how I pay them back. Mm-hmm. Insurance company doesn't tell me. So this is a big difference between like traditional lending from a bank or somebody else. Is they don't tell me how or when I need to pay them back. They just send me annual statements that say, hey, Cameron, you still have $100,000 outstanding against this policy if I haven't paid them back at anniversary, right? But I dictate whether I pay them back on a monthly basis, whether I pay them back principal and interest, whether I pay them back only on an interest-only basis for a period of time. I just started a business, right? I've taken cash out of my policies to get this thing up and going. And, if I need to take 2, 3, 6 months off where I don't make any sort of payments back to that policy until I get my business up and going, they're not going to call and ask me for money, right? I'll pick it up and I'll pay them when cash flow increases and everything gets up and going. So that's probably one of the biggest, I don't want to say stumbling blocks, but it's difficult for people to assume that control because they've always been told how to handle that, right? And so when I start working with somebody is, especially the first couple of years and especially the first couple of loans that they administer is, hey, if you're taking a loan against your cash value, we're on the phone, right? And we are going to have a plan in place to pay that back. And because there's so many variations and so many options, the way that I've kind of simplified it when I talk to clients is, hey, what are we taking it out for, right? Okay, well, if it's a cash flowing asset, then we're going to pay this back on a monthly basis. If you know that this thing is going to be a home run and the money's going to be outstanding for 6 months, and then you've got an extra 20 grand, well, that's fine, right? As long as we know what we're doing and we have a plan to pay that thing back, that's fine. So
yeah,
ton of options.
Yeah, so that is super powerful because, like you said, if you're still going to be paying the 5%, but if you can defer payments for 6 months while you're holding that property, while you're planning to flip it, that's incredible because obviously that really lowers your risk while you're doing that, and you can hold even longer if you know at the back end that profit is there.
Absolutely. And a side note is that 5% that the insurance company is charging us is potentially deductible.
I was going to ask you about that. It could be deducted from your taxes. You can use it as a
We got to do it appropriately, right? Documentation, and it's got to be a valid business expense and those things. And if we're lending it back to our business and the business is making those purchases, then man, it's just like any other interest that we're paying. So
very cool. So how you talked a little bit about it there. How hard is it to take money out of it? You said you've got to know what it's used for, and how quickly can they get it out?
Yeah,
depends, I guess.
Yeah. So how quickly can we get it? I've had you can always have your money next day.
Wow.
So literally Monday morning, you call them and you call the clients call me and they say, Cam, I need 100 grand. Okay, what's the timeline on it? I got a project that's going to come due here in probably 3 weeks to a month. Great. I'll submit it as normal, and it takes 5 to 7 business days. Not a big deal. Have the client send me a text when they receive the funds, right, from the insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
If they call me up and they're like, man, listen, I need it by Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for the heads up, pal, right? But we'll do our best for you. So we'll call up the insurance company. We're like, listen, we got to rush. We're going to pay you $15, right, to next day. We need a check in the mail, or we need those funds to hit by tomorrow. And to this day, right, we've had it, it's come through every single time. So they are on top of it. Insurance companies, the ones that we work with, have done an excellent job as far as bringing in administrative support for instances like that. And that goes into some of the reasons why we work with the companies that we work with, is because big picture is what we're trying to do is we're trying to make that insurance company a bank, and they're not, right? They're very slow to move. They're slow to do things, but they understand what we're doing with these policies. We talk to home office and we say, listen, right, our intent with these clients taking loans is for us to be profitable and for you to be profitable. And so they provide support for that. And man, they want clients happy. We want clients happy. So timeline is we can get it to somebody pretty quick.
And that decision, it lays with the insurance companies, right? It's their decision.
Their decision to do what?
It's their decision to either let the money out or not, or is it, or do they have no choice? Okay.
No, not me personally, but the policy owner, right? So
yeah.
Let me be clear here: is when you initiate a contract with the insurance company, right? Is there's a hierarchy of ownership or whoever's on that policy, and the policy owner ranks number one, right? The policy owner ranks number one, and then everybody else falls in line, which means essentially it's going to be the insurance company. So the way that contract kind of reads in layman's terms is, in this example that we're using, is I have $100,000, right, of cash value.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't call them up and say, hey, I need my money, right, they're going to have that money on reserve, right? They're going to do certain things with it. They're going to make investments with it. But as soon as I call them up and I say, hey, I want my money, right, I want it as a loan, there is nobody that outranks me, right? They are obligated to send me my money. They don't make any decisions in that. I make the decisions whether I want my money now or I want it tomorrow. And then I also make the decisions on how and when I pay them back. So the contract law, not to get too broad, but contract law in the United States is phenomenal. And that's really what is kind of supporting or binding life insurance policies. And right, when you read it, man, the policy owner outranks everybody. If you call them up and say, give me my money, they can't say why. They can't say, why do you need it? They can't say no. None of that. They can't, it's not like going to a bank where you got to qualify to get your own money back, by the way, right? Is they give it to you, no questions asked.
Wow. So you have 100,000 in there and you go, I want to put 95,000 on black at the casino. They'll just be like, here's your money.
They'll probably fly it out in a suitcase and Bellagio just to watch you, right? But,
right.
Like, yeah, man, they're not going to stop you from doing it. That's my job, to stop you from doing it. Be like, okay, let's think about this.
So that's where you come in, right? That's how you're part in this puzzle, right? Is that you're the advisor, I guess, right? In how you use it, how you set it up, what your goals are. That's where you come in.
Yeah, so the design is a big part of it, right? Is, hey, how do we get money into these policies? How do we make these policies perform as efficient as possible based upon somebody's scenario, right? Not everybody has a big lump sum that we can put into it. So maybe we're just contributing on a monthly basis and we need this policy to be most efficient at that level, right? So that's part of it. But then, a lot of my job is really just general counsel, right? It's hey, where should I go to create money outside of this life insurance policy? We have kind of a hierarchy that we walk clients through. And so briefly, I'll just cover it with you. But that first tier that we talk to people about is really cash and cash value and cash flow, right? And so when somebody comes in and they meet with us is, hey man, I'm going to talk to you about cash. Make sure you got cash on hand. I'm going to talk to you about your cash flow. Make sure you're saving 10, 15, 20% of your income. Because if you're not, it doesn't matter what advisor's sitting in front of you. They're not going to be able to do much for you, right?
Yeah.
And if they need help on budgeting, man, I'm happy to help, right? Budgeting is kind of its own little animal. Is, man, if you can make a few tweaks and have some big differences. And then the last part of that first tier for us is really cash value. Is we have yet to find a better place for somebody to store cash. And I've been looking, personally for 12 years, right? Is I do this because it's the best thing that I found, and I can sit there and tell somebody, hey, this is exactly what I'm doing. I've yet to find anything else. So here's the recommendations. Here's how I do it myself. And then once we kind of satisfy that first tier and get somebody in a position where they're safe and secure, they got all the control over their money that they need, then we move them up to tier number 2. And tier number 2 kind of surprises people, right? Is because they think we're going to go get really fancy, right? But man, what I tell everybody is the next step that we're going to make is it's all about control. We are going to go and make an investment into the number one asset that we have the greatest amount of control over, which is ourself, right? Because we are going to put money into personal development, into education. We're going to go find a skill set that we can develop and go get certifications. We can get, whatever that is. My background is, it's all over the place. I've got a little bit of taxes because I got a partner, and so we talk that. I've got a little bit of business background, right? I've got a little bit of financial, and so you're building the skill set that is then turning into a business. Man, if I'm talking to somebody that's 30 and younger, man, I'm not giving advice on stocks, bonds, anything like that. Man, you shouldn't be buying any of that stuff right now. You should be investing back into learning about real estate, learning, right? I mean, going and trying to develop kind of what makes a good deal and those things. I'm not talking about classes because I got a whole thing about like weekend classes and all that, right?
Oh,
But
yeah.
it's developing that skill set. And then what I always tell people is the number one mistake that small business owners make kind of when they talking about the second tier is if you develop a skill set is you get stuck in it. You can become the job. You can become the business. And that is not what we're looking for. Is you've got to develop a skill set to become competent and to create that opportunity. But then you've got to build a business independent of yourself and your skills that can also create an income and create that asset, right? That's where 95% of most small business owners get caught, is they get caught in there where they become the business, and then you look down the road and you can't sell it, you can't do anything with it because people are already doing business because of your name.
Yeah.
Right? As much as cool as I think I am, because I hope people aren't doing business with me just because of my personality or whatever. It's the strategies that we share, and I want Infinite Wealth Consultants to continue to perpetuate, even if I remove myself from the advisory chair whenever that day comes. And then tier 3 is collateral, right? This is big, man, right? This is where real estate and lending kind of comes into play. Is we're not going to go buy assets that don't have any collateral. What I mean by that is we're going to go buy real estate. We're going to go buy a turnkey property and put it 15 to 20,000 down and buy $100,000 asset, right? Because we put 15 to 20 down, we've got $100,000 of that asset, a hard asset that's backing that up. Mm-hmm. What people are buying, right? I'll get to it in a second. And people are putting their money where there is no collateral, right? There's no, if something goes sideways and I own real estate, man, I can sell it and still get my money back, right? Yeah. And so that's what we want to look for. We want to look for lending opportunities, which is where, hey man, somebody has a good deal. Somebody is more proficient at this than I am. And I want to give them, $50,000, $100,000 so that they can just give me some kind of steady income stream. There's a ton of that out there. There's some really bright people that are brighter and smarter than I could ever imagine, that understand how to bring these types of deals and identify them and create those. And so there's some really good opportunities there. So what I say kind of around that tier 3 is really, I characterize that by kind of systems. Is, man, we don't have to go recreate these things. What we're going to go do is we're going to go find somebody that's already doing what we want to do. We're just going to plug into their system, right? And so we don't have to recreate any of it. And that's really what a lot of our podcast has been about is kind of finding those people, doing our due diligence, and finding somebody that has some good ethics and morals behind what they're trying to accomplish, and go find those turnkey providers that are doing the right things, that had a bad experience and started their company so that they could help others and make sure they didn't get burnt. Right? Those are the type of people that we're interviewing on our podcast, and we're trying to lift them up and say, hey, for our clients that have cash, they're looking for something to do or an investment to make, to go talk to these guys, right? Go do your own due diligence, but here's something that we found as an opportunity for you to create some wealth, some passive income, monthly basis, whatever you want. And then our very top tier that we will walk clients to reluctantly is really tier 4, and we call that speculation. And really that's kind of characterized by, made up by most qualified plans, IRAs, 401ks, Bitcoin, those things where there's no collateral behind it, right? There's no cash flow, and there's very little, if any, control. We have no control over that.
Yeah.
And so you can't create wealth on those type of assets. And I think that if you look back over the previous generations that have tried to do that, I mean, the track record's there, right? Is you can't, it's very difficult to be successful under that model. We're not saying that you shouldn't do it, but your exposure should be minimized, right? If you want to do something, what I call that is, I always say, that's play money, right? Tiers 1, 2, 3, that's professional money. That's money that, man, we can't move, we can't lose, that we want to make sure that is going to be there for us from now until whenever, or hopefully generations. But that top tier is really just play money, and that, hey, if we lose it, we're going to sleep at night. Our kids are still going to eat, right? We're not sitting there watching the TV or watching the stocks on our phone. It's just completely separate. So I apologize if I went a little long on that one.
No,
but
not at all.
yeah, man, that's kind of the succession of the hierarchy that I walk clients through. And I took my time there is because, man, nobody's doing that,
Yeah.
right? Everybody just says, give me your money, let me throw it into a qualified plan, and I'll tell you how cool this portfolio is, and come back for it when you're 60. I'm like, dude, yeah, my question, right, is, now you got me going, sorry.
No. Go for it.
My question is what I always wanted to find out for myself was, what did people do to create the money that they have? Right? Because that's not the stock market, right? That's where people go. That's where really wealthy people go to, just to place park money once they made it, right? What did they do to create that money along the way? Has always been my question. And that's why we use our podcast. That's why we bring these people on here that are creating wealth. And we're saying, listen, this is how you're going to do it. And that's the difference between what a lot of advisors are doing, is they're saying, hey, let's go put it over here and let's park it. Well, that's a totally different conversation than how do we create it, right? Is I didn't come from money, right? I had a great life, I had great parents and everything else, but man, we weren't wealthy by any means. And I've got to figure out how to create that. And the way that I'm creating it right now is through my business. Is I've got to develop a skill set, and I've got to develop a business, and I've got to be, astute in these types of things. And that's going to create an income for me. And that's what other people need to do too, in my opinion. So you got me going. I got excited when
I love that. That was fantastic. And that's what I love about what you do as well, because, well, obviously, you're super passionate about it and very knowledgeable, no doubt about it. But also, I think it comes from a really genuine place. If it doesn't work for the people, you're going to tell them. You're not going to put them in a policy just so that you can make some money or whatnot. And you, as you talked about it, you said 4 tiers, right? Just to recap, one is getting your personal finances in order and making sure that you're able to save some money and have everything in order now. Secondly is invest in yourself.
Yeah.
So some kind of education, it could be free, you could pay for it, but develop yourself both in what you want to do and in terms of personal development. And then thirdly is invested in a hard asset, right? Something that's collateralized, I think you can collateralize. So yeah, real estate is a perfect one. And then fourth is some kind of speculation if you're interested in that. But the fourth tier is something that is money that you're willing to lose. Would that be a fair summary?
That is excellent, man. And like I said before, you're a good listener. You got them all. You're spot on. Well done.
Well, I'm really interested. This is really interesting to me. So I really enjoyed listening to you talk. So, but we've covered a lot today. I feel like it's been but just talking to you, I've learned, you know, we met before and we talked about this for me, but even today, just, you know, opening it up a little bit more and going down some different paths, I've
Yep.
learned a lot more today as well. So that's been, for me, if nothing else, I've really enjoyed it from a selfish point of view. I've really, really, really enjoyed
Well,
talking.
I'm no, I'm honored that you'd even asked. Right, is same thing is you know, you and I have crossed paths through mutual friends and events that we've attended, and man, you know what? That's how most of my business has been built over the years. Is really, you know, I meet somebody, focus on them, and try to pour into them and get them on the right track, and then they send me somebody else. They say, hey, you need to talk to this guy. So I'm going to continue to do that. And really, my intent is really just to be a resource. Is, man, if people got questions, I'll take the time. I give out my cell phone. You know, anybody's welcome to call me.
Cool, cool.
Yeah.
So before we go, is there anything that I didn't ask you or anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't covered?
I would say probably the as far as business goes, is the thing that I'm most proud of is our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is man, we started it and we didn't know if anybody would listen. Right? It's just me and my business partner kind of talking a lot of the times, and right, we're kind of going through the stuff that I just went through and just telling people the way that we think and you know, the way or opportunities that we see, or if we see somebody that is doing something great, man, we try to lift them up and just let people recognize them. And that's kind of been the intent behind our podcast. So man, if anybody's interested in kind of just taking a baby step and kind of learning about some of these alternative ideas and alternative strategies to investing, man, check out the podcast, Infinite Wealth Podcast. I'll send the link to you, and you can put in the show notes or however you want to do that. But man, I would love for them to subscribe. And we're coming up on 50 shows now, and we're averaging about 1,500 downloads a month, which just blows my mind. And so it's cool. I'm really proud of that. I don't know if any of those numbers are good, to be honest. I don't have an idea for a benchmark, but
Yeah.
man, I've only got a couple family members, so I know they're making up.
Yeah. So, oh, that's great. Congratulations. Yeah, your podcast is great. So once again, it's called Infinite Wealth Podcast, right? So they just go to the podcast or the iTunes or whatever, they'll be able to find you there. And then on a personal note, how if someone wants to reach out to you to speak to you a little bit more, how do they get in touch?
Yeah, best thing is you can call our office. Our office is 702-850-8100. And Becky will answer. She's awesome. And then she can just put you in my calendar. My cell phone, if anybody really wants it, is 702-378-6800. Call me if I'm not in a meeting. I'll always pick up. And then I also do have a calendar link that can take people right to my calendar. So I can put that in the show notes too. And I'll give you the 15-minute one. So it's just a quick conversation. And like I said, if you have questions, you know, I'm happy to answer them or point you in the right direction.
Cool. Very cool. And then social media, are you on there? What's your TikTok? No, I'm just
TikTok. I'd like to see your TikTok. Your tiny dancer over there. Our website is, man, we just got some amazing pictures that we're taking, and so we're redoing that. But infinitewealthconsultants.com. But I'm personally on social media, just on Facebook, right? Look me up, Cameron Christiansen. And then I'm on Instagram as well, Cameron.Christiansen. And then we do have Instagram, Infinite Wealth Consultants. So, man, we're out there, right? We do have a YouTube channel. I forgot. Actually, YouTube has been great for us, right? So I applaud you for what you're doing is, man, put content and put it out there and people will find you. We've had a great response of just putting some of the videos and some case studies and some of our ideas. We'll record our podcast. We'll put them on YouTube. And people are calling, man. People are showing up in our calendars just from all over the country and asking to learn more. And again, I think I mentioned it before, but what I feel like is a huge value, and I shared with you kind of my headache when I first started was I found out about this strategy and there was nobody that was doing it. Nobody had a clue. I went to the bookstore. I went to Barnes and Noble right back then, and I bought every book I could find that even addressed this concept. And so what we've done is we've tried to organize information. And so again, we do have an online course, And man, if somebody wants that information, reach out to me, text me, whatever you want, and I will get them the link to free access so they can go in there and, like I said, just look around. And there's no sales pitches in there. It's really just right case studies that are in there and how all this stuff works, some policies and those things. And it's just an educational, right? So if somebody has interest, they can find me and I'll get that to them.
Cool. So what is your YouTube? Is it called Infinite Wealth, or what is it?
Yeah, Infinite Wealth Consultants.
Infinite Wealth Consultants. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. I'll put it in the notes.
Cool,
awesome. Man. Thank you so much, man. I really enjoyed it. We've been, I don't know, nearly an hour. I don't know how long it's been flown by. It's been really interesting. I really enjoyed talking to you. You're not only super intelligent, clearly, and super knowledgeable, but you're not bad looking either. So, are you? We were talking about this before. Are you younger or older than me?
I'm 38. I don't know. How old are you?
I'm 38.
38? What do you think? Do you think I'm older or younger?
I can't remember. I think you're close to my age. 37. I'm gonna guess 37.
Nah, I got a baby face. I'm 40.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You look great for it. So.
Yeah, and I was trying to get close to my camera so I could fill up the screen like you. Right? I don't quite do that. But, and then I'm gonna take a picture of us. All right. And we'll post this on social media.
Cool.
I'll tag you, man, and no, I'll tag you with the title. If you want to shoot me a text or whatever, give me the title of the channel that you started. I'll put that in there, man, and see if we can get some people over to you. I watched